Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're literally reimagining the cosmos from the ground up. I want you to stop thinking of the universe as this empty, passive void where objects just happen to float around. Instead, we're exploring a paradigm where the universe is a dynamic, taut, structural fabric. Everything you know, mass, energy, space-time itself, is actually born from the tension of this fabric. We're breaking down the deeply fascinating theoretical framework of Ozo-mechanical relativity.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to break this down into three main acts. Act I covers the cosmic blueprint, Act 2 dives into materials and scale, and Act 3 wraps it up with structural integrity.
All right, let's jump right into the foundation with Act 1, the cosmic blueprint, Phase 1.
Okay, so any solid physical model needs unbreakable rules, right? The very first principle we're looking at here is Ozo-mechanical connectivity. I want you to picture a fundamental field, like a giant invisible tensioned grid. The mass, energy, momentum, and even the curvature of space that we observe, they aren't just independent things dropped into a void. No, they're actually the result of local states of tension and structural connectivity within this very fabric. Basically, everything is just nodes and links pulling against each other in a cohesive, dynamic way. Now, to keep this whole universe from falling apart, the model introduces 7 absolutely foundational principles. We've got the connectivity we just talked about, but there's also things like relational quantization, which is where quantum states naturally pop out of balance conditions all the way down to hierarchical scales. That last one is huge because it proves that atomic, nuclear, and cosmic systems all play by the exact same structural tension rules. And that brings us to Principle 2, finite maximum tension. Check out this equation. Maximum tension, F sub O, equals C to the 4th divided by G sub M. In this universe, there is a hard, absolute limit to how much tension can exist. And that's totally crucial because it stops the universe from just infinitely collapsing in on itself. But here's the real game changer. It completely redefines the speed of light c. Light speed is no longer just a kinetic speed limit for photons, it's the literal physical limit of how fast tension can transfer across the fabric of the universe. So what does this all mean for space itself? Well, enter the principle of emergent geometry. Space-time isn't the canvas anymore. It's not this pre-existing empty stage. The actual metric of space-time emerges strictly as a byproduct of how this fundamental tension is distributed. Think about that for a second. Geometry is quite literally drawn by the physical stress of the universe.
Which perfectly sets up Act 2, Materials and Scale, Phase 2.
I want you to really look at this number. 1.5142 times 10 to the 29th power. This right here is Mulholland's constant, represented as G sub m. This massive value is the central pillar of Phase 2. It's the core number that dictates structural connectivity across every single scale in the Ozo-mechanical model. To put that into perspective, let's compare it to something we already know. We're all familiar with Newton's gravitational constant, G. That's purely gravitational, and it describes macroscopic attraction. You know, planets orbiting stars, apples falling from trees. But Mulholland's constant, G sub m, it is an entirely different beast. It's a multiscale constant of connective tension. It is literally the structural glue holding the entire universe together, from the tiniest quantum quarks all the way up to the cosmic scale. And that structural glue gives us the most critical equation of the entire model. G sub m times m sub m squared equals h bar times c. Look at how beautifully this balances out. Over on the right, you've got h bar, the absolute core of quantum mechanics, multiplied by the speed of light, which is our tension transfer limit. And then on the left, we've got our structural coupling constant, G sub m, multiplied by the reference mass squared. It elegantly, perfectly unites quantum action with structural tension and mass. Using that central equation, the theory derives a complete, closed set of Ozo-mechanical reference units. We get our reference mass sitting at about 4.56 times 10 to the negative 28 kilograms. We have the reference length, the reference time, but actually, let's pause here. Look at that bottom row, the reference energy.
This reference energy, E sub m, comes out to roughly 256.33 mega-electron volts. Why is that specific number such a big deal? Because it's an absolute experimental marvel. This value aligns incredibly closely with actual, real-world nuclear and baryonic binding energies. The theory isn't just spitting out random abstract math, it is pointing directly to the very real energy that binds atomic nuclei together.
And this is a huge turning point for this explainer.
See, traditional physics usually relies on Planck units, but those are based on weak macroscopic gravity, and they exist on scales so unimaginably tiny and distant that they are practically impossible to observe. Ozo-mechanical units, though, because they are built on comprehensive structural tension, they shift our focus right down to the observable, experimental, nuclear, and quantum scales. It grounds the entire theory in tangible reality.
All right, let's move into Act 3, Structural Integrity, Phase 3. So, we've got the blueprint and we've got our materials. But now we have to put this theory through the ultimate scientific stress test. In physics, a theory collapses instantly if its dimensional consistency fails. If your fundamental dimensions, like length, mass, and time, don't balance flawlessly on both sides of the equal sign, the whole architectural framework just crumbles. So the Ozo-mechanical model has to prove that it has a perfectly closed, internally consistent unit structure.
Let's actually walk through the central proof for that core equation step by step. Step 1, we analyze the left side. G sub m times m sub m squared. Those dimensions resolve down to length cubed times mass times time to the negative 2. Step 2, we check the right side. Quantum action times the speed of light. And guess what we get? Length cubed times mass times time to the negative 2. Boom! Absolute flawless dimensional symmetry.
And it's not just that one equation. Every single reference unit derived in this theory resolves beautifully into fundamental physical dimensions. From the reference mass simply being m, down to the maximum tension resolving perfectly into the dimensions of force and action matching the exact dimensions of Planck's constant, the whole shebang works. Everything just matches reality without anyone having to force it.
But to truly validate the theory, we need to look at the dimensionless structure. Let me introduce you to the absolute pinnacle of this mathematical proof, alpha sub O. This structural constant equals G sub m times the mass of an electron times the mass of a proton, all divided by h bar times c. This right here is the ultimate balance test. Let's run the math together. If we break down the numerator, its dimensions are L cubed m t to the negative 2. The denominator? Exactly the same, L cubed m t to the negative 2. So when you divide them, they cancel out perfectly, and the result is exactly 1. Alpha sub O is a true dimensionless constant.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material because it highlights such a profound triumph. The dimensionless structure appears naturally from the theory, rather than requiring manual insertion. You know, in so many other models, physicists basically have to manually inject numbers just to make the math work out. But here, the math closes itself beautifully and totally organically. And because of this perfect internal consistency, we arrive at a completely closed natural system. Check this out. If we set the fundamental constants, so the speed of light, quantum action, and our new structural tension constant G sub m, if we set all of those to equal 1, then the Ozo-mechanical reference mass, length, and time all naturally equal 1 as well. It creates a perfectly cohesive alternative unit system to standard physics.
So, we've explored the blueprint, we've tested the materials, and we've mathematically proven the structural integrity. I want to leave you with this thought. If space, time, and mass are merely emergent properties of a perfectly balanced, tension-based cosmic architecture, how does this reshape your entire understanding of reality itself? Are we really just objects floating through an empty void? Or are we, fundamentally, woven directly into the dynamic tension of the cosmos itself? Take some time to ponder that one. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.